Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. So my introductions. Feedback is important, so feel free to either reach out to me through email, Substack, X, and of course YouTube. It would greatly appreciate it. And also feel free to give me a rating on the audio podcast platforms that I'm about to list. Spreaker, of course, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Deezer, just to name a few. So this episode is all. I said about. I decided that it would be better for me to say those and talk about on next year about different traditions from across the world for Christmas. So this episode is going to focus in on the tradition of elves. You know, that the image of elves is very iconic, especially it's iconic and sweet and gentle. And I think it's apropos, and that's the reason why it evolved itself and wrapped itself around the aspects of Christmas and the meaning and messages of Christmas. So here we go. Let's dive in. Do 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 do, boo 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 boo. Do be do bum be dee 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 do do be do dee dee na 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 Scooby doo be down doo doo Scooby doo 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 a doo 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 a doo 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 a da doo doo yeah. Okay, so I am going to give my thoughts about the aspects of elves and how it's tied in to Christmas. And I'm going to lead in talking about the AI-generated response on elves. So, elves, you see them, particularly in American culture and abroad. So, see it everywhere from Elf on the Shelf to the Keybraille Elf. And then the unified theme of elves is helping. And so, let's say that Santa is the biggest elf of them all with the jolly cheer and everything else. And so, me personally, this also ties down to the aspect of religious attributes to Christmas. So, again, take it for what it will, whether it could be the literary aspects of allegories or not, and then particularly tied into the folklore, Norse folklore, pagan aspects of that and everything. And I'll get into that aspect after my thoughts. So, again, reminiscing and representing the aspect of giving and the aspect of finding joy within creating something that would be of fulfillment of others, particularly children and innocence of children. And also with the elves, spreading that aspect that, too, there are people behind the scenes in the gift-making process. And so, when you go into the aspect of different popular shows, when the aspects of movies, when there's elves involved, particularly going into Santa and the Santa Claus, the one with Tim Allen, the original movie in this series. But the first installment of Santa Claus, he finds out that he is Santa Claus, and then he goes and he discovers there's a whole new atmosphere that, he's, after not believing, then believing, embracing it, that elves really do run a show. And, is a tight-knit business, but business with care and love. And that goes with, and I think that leaks into the aspect of the season, which is, doing your due diligence and finding, whether it be the aspects of, people, and then discovering gifts and finding the right gift for their loved ones. But with that little whimsical magic that elves will give and symbolize and show that there's a lot to say with being humble and putting your love and care into something so you can know that it will bring joy to others. All right, so I'm going to get into the AI-generated aspect of elves, and then I'm going to go into an article about them, and then I'm going to give my thoughts interlaced with the article too. All right, here we go. Okay, so here we go. Here is the AI-generated response of the origin of Christmas elves. The Christmas elves, as we know them today, are a blend of ancient folklore and 19th century literature and artistic influences. Here's a breakdown. So, ancient Norse mythology. The concept of elves, of tar, dates back to the Norse mythology, where they were described as tiny magical creatures, often divided into light elves, which is good, and dark elves, which is bad. So that also links to the aspect of which really is really good about fairy tales, using symbolism with color, with the aspect of good and evil, and that also transcends and relates to Christian themes, spiritual themes, with the aspect of fighting the light and dark and overcoming that and your spirituality. So, okay, here we go. They were believed to possess mortality and magical powers. Germanic and British folklore. Elves appear in Germanic and British folklore, often depicted as mischievous and dwarf-like creatures, sometimes benevolent, sometimes malevolent. They were believed to guard homes against evil and play tricks on naughty individuals. So, Scandinavian influences. And in the 19th century, Scandinavian writers such as Hans Christian Andersen and Brothers Grimm popularized the elves, and their stories often portrayed them as helpful and kind. This is what is linked to the modern aspect of what is known as an elf. And so it's quite apropos to the aspect of this, especially with Hans Christian Andersen, with the aspect of how Disney put his hands in there and then relayed folklore fairy tales by the aspect of the mermaid, the aspect of Frozen, to name a few of his tales. And then, Hans Christian Andersen, his tales were very, very, very dark, to say the least. They also shine a light on the aspect of a harsh reality that is with humanity, especially at the time, in the aspect of the different phases of acceptance of yourself, whether it be the ugly duckling or the aspects of severe poverty and the ins and outs of how that takes a toll on children and the aspects of children in society, with the aspect of the matchstick girl and then things of that nature. And and also to give good credit where credit is due, John Solo did a deep dive about these things, and pay it forward. If you're interested in folklore, go ahead and check out his channel. John Solo is really good. So it just makes a whole lot of sense how these heavy hitters with the aspects of folklore, influence the ideas of elves, and particularly how that also links to the involvement with Christmas. So, Louisa May Alcott's Christmas Eve Elves in 1850. In the 1850s, although Alcott's short story collection was never published, is believed to have contributed to the concept of Santa's helpers. The title Christmas Elves suggested a connection to the holiday and the idea of small magical beings assisting Santa. Harper's Weekly. So in 1857, a poem entitled The Wonders of Santa Claus featured elves working tirelessly to make toys, cakes, and sugar plums for children. This poem helped solidify the image of Christmas elves as Santa's helpers. So, Norman Rockwell in his painting, and Walt Disney. Early 20th century illustrators and artists such as Norman Rockwell and Walt Disney further popularized the modern concept of the elf character, depicting them as diminutive, green and red clad creatures with pointy ears and hats, busy making toys and helping Santa. So modern adaptations. Today, Christmas elves are often featured in children's stories, movies, and advertisements. Their roles and characters are evolving to fit modern holiday traditions. So in summary, the Christmas elves originated from ancient Norse mythology, Germanic/British folklore, and were influenced by Scandinavian writers, and were popularized through literature, art, and media in the 19th and 20th century. Over time, the characters have evolved to become an integral part of modern Christmas celebrations. All right, so I'm going to delve into the aspects of how I'm going to do twofold things. So I'm going to talk about the history. Then I'm going to talk about how, by mental flaws, how did elves become part of Christmas? So, and yeah. So, and I'm going to take it from the science approach instead of with a history, it talks about Elf on the Shelf, but also tying that with Elf on the Shelf, how that's different and, can be creepy to certain company. And then it goes into the history of Santa's little helpers. So, all right, here we are. Let's go even deeper. Okay, so let me just jump right in here and talk about the aspects of elves. So first, I'm going to go into Elf on the Shelf from Live Science. So the children of North America have a new Christmas tradition, the Elf on the Shelf, alternatively painted as creepy and adorned as a fun holiday ritual. The traded Elf on the Shelf dates back to 2005 when author Carol Abersold self-published a tale of a little self sent by Santa to report on children's behavior leading up to Christmas. So, a toy elf sold with Abersold's book plays a role in thousands of homes around the country. Now here we go with the origin of elves. So, it goes into a little more details. So it says, ancient Norse mythology refers to, as I was saying with the AI-generated response, Altafar, also known as Holderfolk or hidden folk. However, it is risky to translate alter father directly to the English word elf. And this is according to Terry Garneau, a folklorist at the state of University of Iceland. So elves are thought to be as little people, perhaps wearing stocking caps and, going about with fairies. But the original concept of an elf was far less whimsical. Some ancient poems place them side by side with the Norse gods, perhaps as another word for a type of gods associated with fertility, or gods associated with the aspects of fertility, or perhaps as their own godly race. It is likely, Gunnell said, that elves the invention of elves had no single aspect or a unified theory on elfish identity. Rather, there were a variety of related folk beliefs regarding this unseen race. So, they look like us, they live like us, as they're saying in this article, at least in older materials. And probably nowadays, if they were living anywhere, they would be living between floors and flat apartments, Gunnell told Life Science. So referring to the notion of an invisible parallel world inhabited by elves, the friendly neighbors who live between the 7th and 8th floors. Okay, so that's quite interesting when, getting the aspects of Christianity, with the aspects of Christmas versus Christianity and versus paganism. So, originally the aspect of celebrating here with how we celebrate Christmas was linked to the aspect of pagan rituals where they would, celebrate their god, their gods, and celebrate the end of winter solstice. And so, to commemorate that, we get these aspects of how celebrations of winter solstice. And so, quite interesting how, getting into the Christian aspects of Christ, this, leads to how we think about when people were becoming more and more understanding and wanting to follow the Christian faith, celebrating the highest and more adorning aspects of how to celebrate their faith. Why not with Christmas and having it associated at the end of winter? Because the reason for Jesus's message is, during, which goes without the saying with the Christmas theme, after a long year, laborious year, or in general, when you're going through a lot of trials and tribulations with the aspect of day-to-day life, Jesus is there to guide you through at the end of the tunnel. He's the light at the end of the tunnel, or light and the darkest days, or light at the darkest month of the year, which is December. And so there's also allude with the aspect of when Jesus was actually born, his birth, and it is not theories and aspects in the text, and then in scholarly aspects of theories that Jesus' birth was actually in the spring. So Easter would be along the lines of really the true aspect of celebrating his birth. So, that's a whole nother thing to talk about. So that's quite interesting, how these things all commingle and with how we celebrate Christmas in our traditions. That is fascinating to me. All right, so I am going to go into mental floss, or what they say about the aspects of elves, and that'll be the wrap up. Okay, here we go. So, it says, how did elves become a part of Christmas? Elves are meant to be supporting players in the story of Christmas, but in the 21st century, they've stolen the show. So Santa's helpers now star in hit movies, decorate our ugly holiday sweaters, and spy on us from shelves, as I was mentioning about elves on the show. Unlike Santa, aka St. Nicholas, elves do not have early analogs in Christianity. So how did the industrious spirit come to be associated with Christmas? Oh, hold on just a minute, my baby. Let me see what happened. All right, I'm back. So, everything's fine, being a little boy there with my son. Yeah, they get into mishap, but it's okay. All right, so, it says, so, naughty and nice. If you don't picture tiny toy makers at North Pole, when you're talking about elves, you may think of woodland creatures from European fairy tales. And more specifically, when, talking about you with Hans Christian Andersen, and also associated with the Brothers Grimm tales. So, and then going on to see what they say about, to extend it out in more detail about the aspect of Norse mythology. So these folkloric figures predate the Christmas characteristic by several hundred years. So although elves are often cited as holidays, history's first elves, the Altafr fair, they vary significantly from the magical fellows we know today. They didn't build shoes or toys while wearing pointy hats. Nordic elves weren't even short necessarily. So the alternative name was, instead of Altafar, was Hulterfolk, or hidden folk. And when they were believed to occupy the unseen realm between worlds. So, again, this goes in the aspect of how we see how that's associated with whimsy and whimsical nature, and the aspects of how that perfectly adorns and how that perfectly associates itself with Christmas, because it's all about the aspect of how magic, transcends and gives that spectacular nature to Christmas, and how that gives children the aspect of believing in something that's beyond understanding, and then also with the aspect of the giving spirit of believing in something magical, you get a reward in return for it. All right, so and beyond that, they weren't as a solid set of characteristics defining the creatures across myths. The ancient Nordic people probably pictured them looking similar to humans. So legends of human-like creatures that lived just out of sight in the shadows of our world soon spread through pre-Christian Europe. So in Scotland, there were brownies, tiny beings, and then there's a book that I have, and it's really good. It's called The Moral Compass. And so I'm going to go back, matter of fact, I'm going to go back and read that book, read it again. And so for the most part, it goes into the aspect of talking about different folklore and different aspects of our culture and, different European culture, and how in that you get the aspect of understanding the golden rule. What's right, what's wrong, and how to treat others. And then brownies are really associated. It talks about how that's really associated of good nature, how that is with the moral compass. So brownies, tiny beings that would either do your chores or make your house messier depending on their mood. So German forgive me for the pronunciation of that, kobolds, similarly, are the alternative between being helpful and impish, as did the Swedish tomati. So, the literary legend it is. So, and the elves and the shoemaker, the Brothers Grimm, painted these stereotypically mischievous creatures in a positive light. So the fairy tale from 1812 follows a poor cobbler struggling to finish his work before Christmas. His business is saved by... Okay, hold on. Let me finish recording and I'll fix it, okay?
Can I get a piece of pizza?
Not right now. Just get an apple. It's hanging on the... Hold on, my child. Look, well, it's better to eat an apple. Don't give me a problem with that, please. Come on. Hey, shh, just for right now, okay?
It's too juicy. It's so weird.
Just eat what you can. Go eat downstairs at the kitchen table, okay?
I don't want to be at the kitchen.
You'll be fine. Just quit whining. I'm sorry about that, yo. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. So, let me go back. The fairy tale from 1812 follows a poor cobbler struggling to finish his work before Christmas. So his business is saved by the elves who visit his shop at night and make his shoes for him while he sleeps. Though Santa Claus does make an appearance, this story may be the first depiction in pop culture of elves in a workshop during the holiday season. Not long after that story's publication came out of the most influential poems, one of the most influential poems on the modern Christmas myth. So in 1823, a visit from St. Nicholas, which was the night before Christmas. Okay, go. And it's more commonly known as it helped shape the image of Santa Claus in the tradition of gift giving on Christmas. It also refers to St. Nick as a jolly old elf, a line that tied the magical beings to the holiday. So more than 30 years later, Little Women author Louisa May Alcott wrote a short story collection entitled Christmas Elves. Though some credit her with the invention of the Santa's Helpers legend, this claim is possible to prove. Santa Elves were never published, and the manuscript is lost to time, which means scholars know little about it beyond the title. Katie, you gotta quit, okay? If you want to be up here, you gotta be quiet. I told you, let me hurry up and finish this, and then I can fix you something. Now, I offered you this apple. You don't want to eat it. So, shh. Hush. I told you to stop. That's not good how you whine. No. Hush. Go in there and sit down or something. Katie, don't you start. Now, you know better than that. I'm sorry, sometimes, children. Y'all know who have children. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Katie, I told you to stop. I'm not telling you again. Stop it. Now let me finish recording. Katie, stop it. So our poem published in Harper's Weekly likely did more to solidify the image of Christmas elves in pop culture. It was entitled The Wonders of Santa Claus. It tells of a team of elves all working with all their might to make a million of pretty things, cake, sugar, plums, and toys to fill the stockings hung up, by little girls and boys. So by the 20th century, the concept of hardworking Christmas elves was mainstream enough to be reproduced by Norman Rockwell and Walt Disney. All right, so to many kids today, Christmas elves are as recognizable as Santa Claus themselves. They are often dressed in fur trimmed costumes with pointy hats and gold bucket belts. So, it was also popularized in the Red-Nosed Reindeer, that clay animation movie in 1964. How, Rudolph, with the aspect of his nose so bright, and how that's associated with elves and Santa, on Christmas night, and you see elves and that whimsical, wonderful clay animation. And of course, Buddy the Elf in 2003. So Buddy the Elf's wardrobe came so close to the animated television special that the production team had to secure special legal permission to use it. Movies aren't the only place these characters pop up. So watch enough commercials or visit enough department stores this time of year, and you're likely to spot them. So these elves are more wholesome than the original creatures from ancient folklore. But they haven't lost their mischievous nature, although. And then, it's quite as the aspect of with with the pagan pre-thought of elves, with the aspect of that of Norse mythology, when they have the associating with fertility and gods. And so how that, blur and welds itself to change to the aspect of what we know today about elves is quite interesting. How things take a turn. And so it's quite interesting, and it re-energizes the spirit or the nature or the intention of something. For instance, so pagan, the aspect of how people who were pagans and their rituals and how they celebrate and adorn to their gods is vastly different from the Christianity aspect of how the belief in one God and how it's celebrated and how that links to the aspect of the wholesomeness and the appreciation of Christmas. And so those things also give a good picture of the aspect of humanity and man in the aspect of spirituality. And, how they, as far as the moral aspect of, what is acceptable to do and what you should be doing when you talk about the aspects of spirituality versus the aspect of, what is thought of about worshiping something from a pagan point of view. It's quite interesting. And a history behind it, too, of how paganism shaped society before Christianity was introduced to the world. That's interesting, too, to look at those both sides, too, to get a balance about what is thought of and how people feel about faith, too. And so, that it's good to have that balance to understand the aspects, as I was saying, about how people thought about paganism versus Christianity. And, again, it gives more of an aspect of how about spirituality, what is the thought process of spirituality versus the aspect of a moral compass. What is the right way to go? And it's good to see those different points of view. All right, so this reaches the end of the Harping Line. I'd like to know what you all think, and all of you, feel free to reach out to me either through email, Substack, and of course for those comments on YouTube. We greatly appreciate it. I'd like to know what you all think about the aspect of elves and Christmas are the aspects of elves in our society. All right, so this reaches the end of the Harping Light. And as I said, throughout the month of December, I'm going to continue to say Merry Christmas and have a very happy New Year. Thank you.